Black CEO mistaken for driver, but he still tips the man who insulted him. "You are late, driver." The words cut through the hum of jet engines like a blade. Darius Cole did not move. He stood beside the sleek black SUV at the private terminal of Northridge Airfield, morning sunlight glinting off the glass hangar doors. The man barking orders, Richard Bennett, tossed his keys toward him without looking twice. "Get my luggage out of the trunk and do not scratch the cases. Those are Italian." Darius caught the keys midair, calm as gravity itself. He wore a plain gray jacket, with no logo, no watch, no hint of wealth by choice. Around them, the runway shimmered with heat. Executives hurried toward chartered jets, while attendants wheeled silver carts of champagne. But all that movement froze for a second as one simple act of arrogance unfolded. Richard looked him over with practiced superiority. "Move faster," he said. "You people always drag your feet." A younger man standing beside him, his son, maybe chuckled quietly. The sound felt like gravel under tires. Darius opened the trunk, lifted the luggage, and placed it neatly on the curb. He said nothing. His calm unsettled them more than any argument could. Inside the terminal's glass doors, a few employees watched. One of them, Elena Ruiz, 26, wearing a neon safety vest, frowned. She had seen that face earlier on an internal briefing that said, "Incoming, Darius Cole, CEO, Aerovista Holdings." But surely that could not be this man, carrying luggage for others. Richard snapped his fingers. "Take the smaller bag, too. My wife packed jewelry. If you drop it, I swear." Darius met his eyes, voice low and steady. "You do not need to swear, sir. I do not break things that are not mine." Richard laughed, mistaking restraint for obedience. "Good attitude. Keep it that way." A pair of maintenance workers paused nearby, uneasy. One whispered, "Man, he is taking this too well." The other muttered, "Maybe he has to." Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we are glad you are here. Now, back to Darius. He rolled the last suitcase toward the waiting jet. The metal wheels clicked against the concrete, crisp, rhythmic, almost ceremonial. Richard's voice trailed after him. "When we land in Houston, make sure you park close to the terminal. My real driver will meet us there." The insult hung in the air like exhaust. Darius closed the trunk, wiped his palms against his jacket, and turned toward the horizon. The rising sun caught the edge of his reflection in the SUV window, half shadow, half fire. He had been mistaken for many things in his life: assistant, bodyguard, janitor. Today, a driver. But this time, the test was different. Because in less than an hour, every person at this airfield would learn who he really was. And the man calling him driver would learn what true class looked like: quiet, steady, and absolutely unshakable. Richard Bennett checked his watch, impatient. "Do not just stand there, driver. Bring the bags inside," he barked. Darius lifted both suitcases with one smooth motion, his grip steady, the metal handles glinting in the light. He walked toward the terminal doors, automatic sensors sliding open with a soft hiss. The scent of aviation fuel mixed with expensive cologne filled the air. Inside, the private terminal looked more like a five-star lounge than a waiting area. Polished marble floors, brass lamps, and portraits of pilots from another era lined the walls. The receptionist at the counter looked up as Darius entered, saw Richard walking behind him, and instantly assumed the hierarchy. "Sir, your flight is boarding soon," she said to Richard with a bright, deferential smile. Her eyes skipped over Darius as if he were invisible. Richard gestured at him. "Set them right there, and do not block the path." Darius placed the luggage near the seating area, calm as ever. The younger Bennett scoffed, whispering, "Man, he even moves like a chauffeur." Darius turned his head slightly, not to argue, but to see how far ignorance could travel before it collapsed under its own weight. At the far corner of the lounge, Elena Ruiz appeared again. Clipboard in hand, headset on, she walked toward the front desk. Her tone was quiet but precise. "Excuse me, could you confirm the arrival of Mr. Darius Cole?" He should have checked in by now. The receptionist frowned, scrolling through her screen. "We have no such entry. Are you sure?" Elena hesitated. "Yes, I saw the manifest myself." Richard overheard and laughed. "You must mean him." He pointed toward Darius, still standing by the luggage. "He told you that name, did he? That is cute." The laughter spread soft, awkward, poisonous. Elena froze. Her instinct told her something was off. She stepped closer to Darius and spoke carefully. "Sir, could I please see your boarding pass?" He nodded, pulled a small envelope from his jacket, and handed it to her. The gold-embossed seal of Aerovista Holdings shimmered under the lounge lights. Elena's heart skipped. She looked up, meeting his eyes. They were calm but carried weight like someone who had been patient far too long. Before she could say another word, the terminal manager appeared. His name tag read, Paul Hensley. He approached quickly, his tone defensive. "What seems to be the problem here?" Richard answered before anyone else could. "Your staff needs better screening. This man is pretending to be a passenger. Probably some kind of scam." Paul turned to Darius. "Sir, if you do not have clearance, I will have to ask you to step outside." Elena started to protest. "Mr. Hensley, please wait," but he cut her off. "Miss Ruiz, stay out of this." Darius's phone vibrated once. A quiet reminder. The time was 9:47 a.m., exactly when his assistant was scheduled to finalize the acquisition paperwork. He took a slow breath and spoke evenly. "You are asking the wrong man to step outside." Paul frowned. "Excuse me?" Darius placed the phone on the counter. On its screen glowed a single message. Aerovista Holdings, acquisition of North Ridge Airfield confirmed. Effective, immediately. For a moment, no one moved. Richard's smirk faded. The receptionist's hand hovered above the keyboard. Elena exhaled softly, realization dawning in her eyes. Darius spoke again, voice low, deliberate. "I did not come here for a flight. I came to see how this place treats the people it thinks are beneath it." He picked up his phone, slid it into his pocket, and added, "Now I know." Silence spread through the lounge like an alarm no one could hear. Even Richard's son shifted uncomfortably. Outside, the engines of a waiting jet thundered once, then fell quiet, as if the world itself paused to listen. Darius turned toward the window, sunlight spilling across his face. The reflection staring back at him was not a driver, not a victim, but a man who no longer needed to prove where he belonged. The sound of silence felt heavier than the roar of any jet. Richard Bennett blinked, his confidence cracking like glass under pressure. "Wait a second," he stammered. "You are saying you own this place?" Darius did not answer right away. He turned slowly, letting the weight of his calm settle into every corner of the lounge. "Not just this terminal," he said. "The entire airfield. As of this morning, Aerovista Holdings controls every operation, every lease, every gate." The manager, Paul Hensley, swallowed hard. His posture shifted from authority to confusion. "Mr. Cole, I had no idea. We were not informed." Darius's voice stayed even. "That was the point. I wanted to see who you are when no one is watching." Elena Ruiz lowered her clipboard, her eyes wide with both shock and pride. She whispered, "I knew it. I knew that name." Richard tried to laugh it off, but it came out thin and nervous. "This is ridiculous. If you really own this place, then why were you carrying luggage?" Darius looked at him without anger, only clarity. "Because character is revealed when there is nothing left to prove." Across the room, one of the attendants set down a tray of champagne flutes, the glasses trembling slightly against the marble. The tension was physical now, visible in every stiff shoulder and averted glance. Richard's son broke the silence. "Dad, we should go." But Richard could not let go of his pride that easily. "No," he said sharply. "You cannot just walk in here and pretend to test people like this. It is manipulative." Darius nodded once. "You are right. It is uncomfortable to face your reflection when the mirror finally talks back." The terminal doors slid open, and a gust of air from the runway swept through the lobby. The flags outside fluttered. Elena took a step closer. "Mr. Cole, what would you like me to do?" Darius turned toward her, his tone softer. "Start by logging everything you saw and heard. No one will lose their job for speaking the truth." Paul Hensley bowed his head slightly. "Sir, I take full responsibility. I did not recognize—" Darius interrupted, calm but final. "Recognition is earned, not requested. What you failed to recognize today was dignity." Richard ran a hand through his hair, the arrogance now replaced by panic. "Look, this was a misunderstanding. I did not mean—" Darius stopped him with a quiet gesture. "You meant every word until it cost you something." He reached into his wallet and took out a crisp $100 bill. He placed it on the marble counter between them. "You wanted me to act like a driver," he said. "So here is your tip. Consider it payment for the lesson." Richard stared at the bill, color draining from his face. No one laughed this time. The gesture was not cruel, it was precise, surgical, almost graceful. Elena exhaled, the tension breaking around her. "He still tipped the man who insulted him," she murmured. Her voice carried through the room like an echo of justice. Darius adjusted his jacket, looked toward the window, and saw his company jet waiting its silver wings gleaming under the late morning Sunday. He walked toward the door, each step measured and steady. The staff moved aside instinctively, forming a silent path. At the threshold, he paused and glanced back once. "You cannot buy respect," he said quietly. "You can only practice it." Then he stepped into the light, leaving the stunned faces behind. Outside, the engines rumbled to life. As he climbed aboard, Elena watched through the glass. In that moment, she understood why his silence felt louder than any speech. Power was not in the shout or the threat. It was in the choice to walk away without anger, dignity intact, and lesson delivered. The jet door sealed with a muted thud. Inside, the cabin hummed with a low, even vibration. Darius Cole settled into his seat, the leather cold against his palm. Through the oval window, he could still see the terminal where moments ago a man had mistaken him for a driver. Now, the same man stood small and motionless behind the glass, watching a plane he could never board. Darius reached for his tablet and unlocked it with a thumbprint. The screen brightened with reports, contracts, and the final confirmation of Aerovista's acquisition. Every line glowed with quiet triumph, but his expression did not change. Victory meant nothing if it only fed pride. What mattered was what he did next. His phone vibrated once. Carla Evans, his chief operations officer, appeared on the secure video feed. "Congratulations, sir," she said. "Northridge Airfield is officially ours. Do you want me to begin restructuring immediately?" Darius looked out the window again before replying. "Not yet. There are good people there. Find out who stood up, who spoke truth. Keep them. The rest will reveal themselves." Carla nodded. "Understood. There is a lot of chatter online already. Someone inside must have filmed the encounter." Darius exhaled slowly. "Let them talk. The story will teach what my words never could." Outside, the engines powered up. A deep rumble rolled through the cabin like distant thunder. He remembered another morning, 20 years earlier, when he had been turned away from a flight because the gate agent assumed he was in the wrong line. He had smiled then too, but that smile carried a promise one day. He would build a company that owned the skies that once shut him out. Now that promise was real, yet the weight of it did not feel like revenge. It felt like responsibility. He closed the tablet and leaned back as the jet began to taxi. Across from him, a flight attendant approached, professional but hesitant. "Mr. Cole, would you like something to drink before takeoff?" He shook his head. "Just water. And do me a favor, send a note to the terminal staff. Tell them their new owner expects them to treat every guest like a shareholder." The attendant smiled softly. "Yes, sir." She turned away, and for a brief second, Darius saw his reflection in the mirrored cabinet behind her. A man who had everything, but still remembered what it was like to have nothing. As the jet rolled toward the runway, he glanced at the folded bill still in his pocket, the same one he had placed on the counter minutes before. He had retrieved it quietly after Richard walked away in shame. Now, he smoothed its edges and placed it inside his journal. A reminder: power used with mercy never weakens. It refines. The jet lifted off, climbing into the clear blue. Below, the airfield shrank into a cluster of gray lines and asphalt. Darius watched until it became only a dot against the earth. He thought of Elena Ruiz, the young technician who had dared to question authority when no one else did. He made a note to promote her once operations stabilized. The world needed more people who chose truth over comfort. Carla's voice came through the intercom again. "Sir, do you want to issue a public statement about the acquisition?" Darius smiled faintly. "No statement, just results. Let people see the difference when leadership values humanity more than hierarchy." The plane cut through the clouds, sunlight bursting across the cabin. Darius closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the hum of altitude beneath him. The higher he climbed, the quieter it became. Not because the noise stopped, but because he had finally risen above it. The jet sliced through the upper atmosphere, leaving a pale silver trail against the morning sky. Darius Cole sat quietly, pen in hand, writing notes in the narrow, leather-bound journal that never left his briefcase. The ink lines were steady and neat observations, not emotions. He wrote names, moments, lessons. Beneath a short list, he underlined 3 words: Grace under fire. His phone blinked with a soft notification. Carla's message appeared again. Media inquiry pending. Local reporters heard something happened at North Ridge Airfield. He read the text once, then turned the screen off. Let the story breathe, he said to himself. The truth sounds louder when it travels without noise. Across the cabin, the flight attendant returned with a glass of water and a small envelope. Sir, this was delivered from ground control right before takeoff. It is marked urgent. Darius took it, slid a finger under the flap, and unfolded a single page. It was a handwritten note from Elena Ruiz. Her words were simple. Thank you for standing tall without shouting. I learned more in 10 minutes from watching you than in 3 years of training. A small photo was attached. She had taken it through the terminal glass. It showed Darius's reflection against the plane, sunlight streaking across the metal like a halo. He smiled, faint but genuine. It had been a long time since he had seen proof that his silence could still teach. The engines deepened their tone as the jet climbed higher. The clouds outside formed bright towers of white. Darius placed the letter inside his journal, beside the folded $100 bill. 2 reminders from the same morning, one of arrogance, one of gratitude. Together they told the full story of humanity, fall and redemption, ignorance and awareness. He thought of Richard Bennett again, the man with too much confidence and too little humility. The last thing Darius saw before boarding was Richard's face, pale and small against the glass. He had not reported him to corporate. He had not demanded an apology. That was not the lesson. The lesson was for Richard to live with the weight of his own reflection. Carla's voice came through the speaker once more. Sir, the board meeting for the transition team is scheduled in 2 hours. Do you wish to join remotely? Darius replied, Yes, but before we begin, send a memo. I want the first agenda item to be about employee conduct, not revenue. There was a pause. Understood, Mr. Cole. Yeah. The jet leveled at cruising altitude. Sunlight filled the cabin, touching the silver accents and turning everything to gold. Darius rested his hands together, fingers interlaced, eyes on the horizon. He remembered his father's words from years ago. You will know who you are the day you stop trying to prove it. The seatbelt sign turned off with a soft chime. The flight attendant approached again, offering a tablet showing the new branding mock-ups for Aero Vista. We are refreshing the company slogan, she said. On the screen, the words appeared, Flying Beyond Status. Darius read them silently. That works, he said, because respect should not depend on rank. It should be the air we breathe. Below, the land stretched endlessly, small towns and roads weaving like silver veins through the earth. Every mile reminded him of how far he had come from the boy once told to wait outside a gate, to the man now flying over it. He closed the journal and placed it on the table. The pen rolled slightly and stopped. Grace under fire, he whispered again. Always. Outside, the jet banked gently toward the west, sunlight washing the cabin in calm gold. And for the first time that day, Darius allowed himself to exhale fully, no anger left, no noise to drown out. Only peace, earned and understood. The meeting began exactly 2 hours later. Darius Cole appeared on the screen inside the Aero Vista boardroom, a clear image framed by the window of his jet. The directors were already seated, each face illuminated by the glow of their tablets. The sound of engines in the background gave the moment a steady rhythm like the heartbeat of the company itself. Good afternoon, Mr. Cole, said Carla Evans from the head of the table. The acquisition of North Ridge Airfield is now complete. Shall we begin with the financials? Darius shook his head slightly. Not today. We begin with conduct. His voice was calm but carried weight. What happened this morning was not about numbers. It was about perception and behavior, the real currency of any company. The room went silent. Several directors exchanged uneasy glances. Darius continued. When our employees, or our partners, look at a person and decide their worth based on what they wear or what they drive, we lose more than business. We lose moral altitude. Carla nodded slowly. You want a full retraining initiative? I want something deeper, he replied. We will call it the Horizon Program. Every employee, from top management to ground crew, will complete it. It will teach awareness, respect, and accountability. He paused, letting the words settle. There was one employee today who saw what others refused to see. Her name is Elena Ruiz. She questioned authority, even at the risk of her job. That is leadership in its purest form. I want her promoted to the new oversight division. A murmur of surprise moved across the room. Carla smiled faintly. I will make it happen. Darius leaned back in his seat. Also, send a personal letter of acknowledgement to every staff member who kept their professionalism. And to those who failed, give them a choice: retraining or release. The directors nodded, some more slowly than others. Darius's tone softened. We are not in the business of punishment. We are in the business of progress. If people are willing to learn, we give them that chance. If not, we move forward without them. Outside the jet window, clouds drifted like slow-moving mountains. The sunlight caught the edges of his face, half shadow, half resolve. Carla cleared her throat. Sir, there is something else. The video from the terminal has gone viral. It has over 2 million views in less than an hour. Darius looked unfazed. Then let it serve its purpose. People will argue, but somewhere in that noise, someone will learn the meaning of composure. He adjusted his cufflinks, silver and understated. Prepare a statement for the company's social media page. Keep it simple. 4 lines. Oh, Carla typed as he spoke. Aerovista Holdings does not measure worth by appearance. We measure it by integrity. To those who choose respect, our doors are open. Always. Darius nodded. Post it. The meeting wrapped quietly. Carla stayed on the call as the others signed off. You know, she said, most CEOs would have fired everyone involved and called it a day. Darius smiled faintly. Most CEOs react. We build. When the call ended, he looked out the window again. The world below had softened into patterns of light and cloud. He thought of the boy he once was 12 years old, sitting in a crowded airport terminal, holding his mother's hand while strangers refused to sit beside them. That boy had made a silent vow to build spaces where no one would feel small again. Now, decades later, the vow lived through his work, not his words. The plane began its descent toward San Francisco, where the next chapter waited. Darius closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the subtle tilt of gravity as the jet lowered. It reminded him that even in flight, humility kept him grounded. The intercom clicked once. The pilot's voice came through, steady and respectful. Mr. Cole, we are beginning our approach. He opened his eyes and whispered, Good. Let us land with purpose. The jet touched down at San Francisco International just as the sun began to slide behind the horizon. The runway lights blinked in perfect sequence, a ribbon of gold guiding the plane to its gate. Darius Cole waited until the cabin door opened, then stepped into the cool evening air. The city skyline glimmered in the distance, sharp and alive, the way opportunity always looks from far away. His driver, a real one this time, stood by the car, holding the door open. Welcome home, Mr. Cole. Darius nodded, offering a quiet thank you. The black sedan pulled away from the terminal, merging into the private exit road. Inside, the city lights reflected across the window, layering over his face like moving constellations. Carla's voice came through the car's speaker. Sir, quick update. The video from Northridge Airfield has reached 4 million views. The comments are split. Some praise your restraint, others call it staged. Darius's tone was even. Let them debate. The point is not to convince everyone. The point is to remind a few. Carla hesitated. There is also a request from a major news outlet. They want to interview you live tomorrow morning. He watched the skyline pass by. Decline politely. Tell them I prefer to speak through action. The car glided through the city streets until it reached the Aerovista headquarters, a glass tower overlooking the bay. Inside the lobby, the night crew stood a little straighter as he walked past. Word had already spread. Some smiled nervously. Others looked at him with newfound respect. He acknowledged them all with a nod. No speeches, no performance, just presence. He entered his office on the top floor. The space was minimalist. One desk, one framed photo of his mother, and the soft hum of the city below. He loosened his tie and stared at the lights scattered across the water. Each one flickered like a memory. He opened the journal again and wrote a single line. Humility travels farther than noise. Then he placed the pen down and turned on the wall monitor. A live news broadcast filled the screen. The anchor's voice carried both excitement and disbelief. Earlier today, a misunderstanding at Northridge Airfield turned into a viral lesson on dignity. The man mistaken for a driver turned out to be the new owner of the facility, Darius Cole, CEO of Aerovista Holdings. Witnesses say he handled the situation with remarkable calm and generosity. The anchor paused, then added, in an age of outrage, perhaps restraint is the rarest form of strength. Darius turned off the screen. The silence that followed was deep but comforting. He looked at the folded bill inside his journal and smiled. One man's insult, he said softly, can become another man's reminder. His assistant, Mason, entered quietly. Sir, everything is ready for tomorrow's leadership summit. We have confirmed attendees from 5 countries. Good, Darius replied. Make sure the opening session starts with the Horizon program briefing. Yes, sir. And what about the charity initiative for the aviation scholarship? Darius thought for a moment. Double the funding. Make it available to students from underserved schools. Let them know we are serious about giving others their first flight. Mason nodded, then hesitated at the door. Mr. Cole, may I ask something? Of course. Why did you not expose the man who insulted you? You could have ended his career with one sentence. Darius looked out the window again, the city lights now reflected in his eyes. Because exposure changes headlines, he said. But forgiveness changes people. Mason said nothing more. He simply nodded and left the room. Alone again, Darius watched as fog began to roll in from the bay, softening the edges of the skyline. He closed his eyes briefly and whispered, "The higher you rise, the gentler you must land." Then he turned off the lights, leaving only the glow of the city to speak for him. Morning arrived with a sharp clarity that only San Francisco could hold. The bay shimmered like liquid glass, and gulls traced wide arcs over the water. Inside the Aero Vista headquarters, the conference floor buzzed with quiet anticipation. Today marked the first official leadership summit under Darius Cole's direction since the acquisition. Executives, managers, and partners filled the large glass auditorium. Cameras and microphones were in place, but Darius had already given one instruction. No press questions, no performances, only truth. He entered without fanfare, dressed simply in a charcoal suit, his expression calm but alert. Conversations stopped. People stood as he walked to the podium. He waited until the room settled, then spoke. "Good morning. Before we begin, I want to share a story," he said. His voice carried easily through the space, steady, measured, warm. "Yesterday morning, I was mistaken for a driver. The man who made that mistake did not know my name, my role, or my purpose. He looked at me and saw what he expected to see. That moment reminded me why we are here today." A ripple of surprise moved across the room. Some had read the headlines. Others were hearing it for the first time. Darius continued, "We talk about innovation, about speed, about growth. But none of it means anything if we lose our ability to see each other clearly. Success is not measured by the height we reach, but by the dignity we maintain while climbing." He paused, letting the silence breathe. "That is why I am launching the Horizon program. Every employee, every leader, every partner will go through it. It is not a punishment, it is a mirror. It will ask one question: how do you treat people when you think no one is watching?" Applause began softly, then grew. Darius lifted a hand gently, stopping it. "Do not clap for me. Take that energy and invest it in the culture we build from this day forward." Carla Evans stepped forward to display the program outline on the screen behind him. Words appeared in clean white letters. Awareness, empathy, accountability. Darius turned toward the display. "These are not slogans," he said. "They are habits. We practice them until they define us." Someone from the audience raised a hand. "Mr. Cole, may I ask what happened to the person who insulted you?" The room tensed. Darius's gaze was steady. "He was not fired," he said. "He was invited to training. What he does with that invitation will decide his future, not my anger." The crowd murmured again, a mix of admiration and disbelief. Darius continued, "In this company, leadership is not the ability to dominate. It is the strength to correct without humiliation and to forgive without weakness." At the back of the room, a group of young interns listened in silence. One whispered, "He turned an insult into a policy." Another replied, "He turned it into a lesson." When Darius finished, he stepped away from the podium. Carla closed the presentation with a final line on the screen. "The sky belongs to everyone who dares to look up." As the audience stood in applause this time, Darius walked to the side door, not toward the cameras, but toward the hallway lined with photographs of Aero Vista's earliest flights. He stopped before one image, his very first jet, small, worn, and beautiful in its imperfection. He touched the glass lightly and said under his breath, "We built this to rise. but we must never forget to lift others too. Outside, the fog had begun to roll back across the bay. The morning light grew stronger, spilling through the tall windows of the auditorium, catching Darius in its path. For a moment, the reflection of the city and the man became one, the builder and the believer, standing in the same light. The summit ended just after noon. The crowd of executives and staff moved out of the auditorium with a kind of quiet awe. No one had expected the meeting to feel like a turning point. For the first time in years, people were not just talking about profits, but about purpose. Darius Cole stayed behind in the empty room. He stood near the tall windows, watching the city move below. Cars glided through the streets, ships cut across the bay, and the rhythm of the world went on. He did not feel larger than it. He felt aligned with it. Carla Evans entered softly, carrying a folder. "Sir, these are the preliminary responses from the team. 98% of staff approved the Horizon program within the first hour." Darius smiled faintly. "Good. That means 2% are still thinking. I like thinkers." She placed the folder on the table. "There is something else," she said. "A message came through the public contact form this morning. It is from a man named Richard Bennett." Darius turned slowly. "Go on." Carla hesitated before reading aloud. He wrote, "Mr. Cole, I owe you an apology. What I said to you was cruel, and I will not excuse it. I watched that video last night, and for the first time I saw myself through someone else's eyes. My son saw it too. He told me he was ashamed. Thank you for not destroying me when you had every reason to. You taught me more in silence than my life ever did in noise." The room was quiet for several seconds. Darius looked down, then nodded once. "People are capable of change, Carla. Sometimes they just need to see the truth standing still long enough to recognize it." "Do you want to respond to him?" she asked. "Yes," Darius said. "Dictate this for me." Carla opened her tablet. He spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "Mr. Bennett, apology accepted. I am not interested in your shame, only in your growth. If you ever want to learn more about how to lead with integrity, the Horizon program has a seat for you. No cameras, no headlines, just the work." Carla finished typing and smiled. "That is going to surprise him," Darius shrugged gently. Surprise is how humility begins. Outside, a gust of wind pushed against the glass. The sky shifted from blue to silver. Darius looked at the reflection of himself in the window, the faint outline of a man who had chosen patience over pride. He thought of his mother again, the way she used to say, "Do not chase respect. Earn it by standing where others fall." He turned back toward Carla. "Prepare an invitation for Elena Ruiz. I want her at the next summit as a speaker, not a technician." She saw what others refused to see. Carla nodded quickly. "I will handle it." He picked up the folded $100 bill from his journal and held it between his fingers. "This," he said, "used to represent insult. Now it represents choice. Every day, people have a chance to turn their lowest moment into a higher one." Carla tilted her head. "Are you going to frame it?" Darius shook his head. "No, I'm going to keep it in my pocket. A reminder that power does not stay clean unless you keep washing it with perspective." She smiled at that, quietly impressed. "You know, most stories like this end with someone being punished. Yours ends with someone learning." Darius looked toward the skyline one more time. Punishment ends a story. Learning begins one. The light shifted again, catching the edge of his suit and turning it gold. Somewhere below, the city moved forward, unaware that it was being rewritten in real time by a man who chose grace over glory. And for Darius Cole, that was victory enough. The next morning broke clean and pale over the bay. A light mist hugged the water, and the first sunlight reached the top floors of the Aerovista Tower. Inside his office, Darius Cole stood beside the window, a cup of coffee untouched on the table. He had been awake since before dawn, reviewing progress reports from the Horizon program's first rollout. The feedback was honest, unfiltered, and exactly what he had hoped for, uncomfortable truths that would move the company forward. A soft knock came at the door. It was Mason, his assistant, holding a small box wrapped in plain paper. "This just arrived, sir. No sender listed." "Oh, what?" Darius took the box, untied the string, and opened it carefully. Inside was a miniature silver airplane, engraved with the words, "To the man who taught me to look up." Beneath it lay a note. It was signed by Richard Bennett. Mason waited quietly as Darius read it. The letter said, "I attended your Horizon program orientation last night. It humbled me. You were right. Growth does not come from humiliation. It comes from reflection. My son asked me to thank you for giving me that chance. I will spend the rest of my career earning the respect I once demanded. Darius folded the note and placed the small plane on his desk beside his mother's photo. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, people surprise you when you stop trying to win against them and start trying to reach them. Mason nodded, unsure what to say. That is powerful, sir. Darius turned to him. Powerful is not the goal, Mason. Useful is. The intercom buzzed. Carla's voice came through, crisp and warm. Mr. Cole, Elena Ruiz has arrived. She is early for her meeting. Send her in, he said. Elena entered with a nervous smile. She was still in her technician's uniform, but she carried herself with new confidence. Mr. Cole, thank you for seeing me. He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. You earned this seat, Elena. Tell me, what did you see that day at the airfield that made you step forward? She thought for a moment. I saw everyone pretending not to see, and I knew that if I stayed silent, I would be just like them. Darius nodded slowly. Courage is quiet until the world goes still enough to hear it. You reminded me of that. She looked surprised. Me? I thought I was just doing what was right. He smiled. That is exactly what makes it rare. He opened a folder and slid it across the desk. This is your new role, Director of Integrity and Training for Aero Vista. You will lead the Horizon program from the inside. Her eyes widened. Sir, I do not even have a management degree. You have something better, he said. You have proof. Elena's eyes glistened. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Do not thank me, he said. Just make sure the next Elena Ruiz never feels like she has to ask for permission to do the right thing. She stood, shaking his hand firmly. When she left, the office felt lighter, as if the future had just walked through the door. Darius turned back toward the window. The fog was lifting, and the city began to shine again. He thought about how easily one small act, a single decision to remain calm, had rippled outward into thousands of conversations across the world. He whispered to himself, the loudest echo of dignity is not applause. It is change. As the morning light filled the room, the silver airplane on his desk caught the sun, sending a thin beam of light across the photo of his mother. For a moment, the reflection looked almost like motion, like something taking flight all over again. And Darius Cole smiled, not because the world had noticed him, but because it had finally started to understand. That afternoon, the Horizon program began its first full day of training across every Aero Vista division. From flight attendants to regional managers, from engineers to security staff, every department gathered in conference rooms and hangars connected by live broadcast. The slogan filled each screen in bold white letters, "Respect is the runway." Darius Cole chose not to attend in person. Instead, he sat quietly in a small observation room at headquarters, watching the feed from dozens of locations. On the screen, he saw teams from different cities, Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, each sitting together, listening, reflecting. The sight reminded him of what his company could be when ego was replaced by awareness. Carla entered with a tablet. Sir, the numbers are remarkable. 90% engagement so far. The training facilitators are calling it transformational. Darius's eyes stayed on the screen. Transformation is easy to say, he said. Living it is harder. Ask me about the numbers again in 6 months. Carla smiled. You never settle, do you? He glanced at her. Settling builds comfort. I build altitude. One of the feeds caught his attention. It showed the Northridge Airfield Lounge, the very place where everything had begun. The same polished floor, the same windowed walls, but now filled with employees seated in a circle, notebooks open. Elena Ruiz stood at the front of the room, leading the session. She spoke with confidence and warmth, using her own experience as the first example. She is good, Carla said softly. They are listening to her. Darius nodded. Because she lived the lesson, not just learned it. On the screen, Elena asked the group a simple question. What does respect look like when no one is watching? The room fell quiet. Then one of the former managers, the man who had once stood by while Richard made his comments, raised his hand. It looks like giving someone the same tone you would give your boss, he said. Elena smiled. Exactly. It looks like equality, not pity. Darius leaned forward, his attention fixed. He could almost feel the energy through the screen, a slow but steady rewiring of the company's DNA. Carla's phone buzzed. Sir, you are being invited to a live broadcast at the close of the session. The staff wants to hear from you directly. He thought for a moment, then nodded. Patch me in. Within seconds, His image appeared on screens across the country. The rooms went still. Darius spoke calmly. "Good afternoon, everyone. I see familiar faces, some proud, some uncomfortable. Both are welcome. Discomfort is where growth begins." He paused, letting the silence carry the message. "I want you to remember something. Yesterday, this company bought an airfield, but today, you bought back your humanity. Every passenger, every colleague, every stranger who walks through our doors should feel one thing: dignity." The employees began to nod, some even applauding softly. Darius finished. "We cannot control how the world sees us, but we can control how we see each other. Let that be our flight plan from this day forward." When the feed ended, Darius exhaled slowly and turned to Carla. "Schedule a follow-up with all departments next quarter. I want to know what changed and what did not." "Of course," she said. "Anything else?" "Yes," he replied. "Send a scholarship offer to Elena Ruiz's hometown community college. Let them know we are funding aviation internships for students who cannot afford tuition. The future of this company should look like her: brave, prepared, and grounded." Carla's smile deepened. "You are turning one bad day into an entire movement." Darius looked back at the screens, watching the employees in their breakout circles. "No," he said quietly. "They are. I just gave them permission to start." Outside, planes took off one by one, engines rising into the clear blue sky. Each roar sounded like a promise being kept. The day faded into evening again, the horizon stretching wide and quiet over the bay. The Aero Vista Tower glowed against the darkening sky, its lights steady like beacons for the city below. From his office, Darius Cole stood at the window, watching the last flights of the day ascend into the fading gold. Each engine trail shimmered briefly, then vanished into cloud. The Horizon program had ended its first day with success. Reports from every division filled his inbox, stories of apologies, breakthroughs, and small moments of realization. One supervisor in Atlanta wrote that his team had sat together for an hour after the session, talking honestly for the first time in years. Another from Chicago said a mechanic had quietly shaken hands with a coworker he had ignored for months. Change had begun, not from policy, but from conversation. Darius smiled faintly as he scrolled through the messages. Progress, he thought, was rarely loud. It sounded more like people learning to listen again. The door opened softly. Carla entered, holding her coat. "Long day, sir. You should head home." He closed the laptop. "Soon. I just want to see the last flight take off." They both turned to the window. Down on the runway, a final jet was preparing for departure. Its tail bore the new Aero Vista logo and the updated slogan, "Flying Beyond Status." The plane accelerated, lifting gracefully into the night. The glow of its engines painted streaks of amber across the clouds before disappearing completely. Carla looked at him. "You changed how people see this company in 48 hours. That is rare." Darius shook his head gently. "I did not change them. They saw what was always possible." She smiled. "Even so, it is something to be proud of." He turned toward her. "Pride should have a ceiling. Gratitude should not." She nodded once, understanding, then said her goodnight and left him alone with the skyline. The room fell into stillness. Only the low hum of the city remained, a rhythm that reminded him of the runway before takeoff: anticipation, potential, calm power waiting to move. He walked to his desk and picked up the folded $100 bill. The edges were worn now from being carried in his pocket. He placed it carefully into the journal beside the silver airplane. Two objects from the same story, one born of arrogance, the other of redemption. Together, they made sense. Opening the journal, he wrote the final entry of the day. "Justice is not about defeating someone. It is about awakening everyone." He closed the book, slipped it into his briefcase, and took one last look at the skyline. The city lights looked like stars that had fallen close enough to touch. Somewhere in that glow, people were still talking about what had happened: the man mistaken for a driver, the quiet answer that became a movement. Darius whispered to the window, "If even one person learned to see differently, the day was worth it." As he turned off the lights, the reflection of the city lingered on the glass for a moment longer, merging with his own silhouette. It looked less like power and more like peace. He stepped out of the office, the door clicking softly behind him. Outside, the night air was cool and alive. A plane passed overhead, its lights tracing across the darkness. He watched it climb higher and higher until it became just a glimmer, steady and certain, against the endless sky. Voiceover. Power is not how loud you speak. It is how calm you remain when others forget who you are. Darius Cole did not win by proving himself. He won by remembering himself. And in that remembering, he gave the world something rare, a glimpse of strength that chooses grace. The sound of the jet faded into the distance, leaving only silence and the soft heartbeat of the city below. The story had ended, but its echo dignity without noise was only just beginning. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story moved you, take a second to support the channel. Subscribing is completely free, but it helps us grow and keep sharing stories that matter. Your engagement, your likes, your comments, your shares keeps this message of dignity and justice alive. Before you go, tell us where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below, and let's build a community that believes in respect, strength, and grace. Hit subscribe, stay inspired, and remember every story you share helps someone see the world a little clearer. See you in the next video.